individual bio. Joe Liggio is a Texas botanist, a native photographer and writer. He and his spouse Anne wrote The Wild Orchids of Texas, published in 1999 by the University of Texas Press. The book is considered the essential guide to all 54 of Texas wild orchids. His photos and writings have been published in various magazines, including Texas Highways, Texas Parks and Wildlife Magazine, Science, the Bulletin of the American Orchid Society, called Orchids, Earth Magazine, Texas Mushrooms, and the Illustrated Flora of East Texas. Joe is currently serving on the board of directors for the Watson Rare Native Plant Preserve in Warren, Texas. Let's welcome Joe to our.
Yeah, I'm happy to be here tonight. I've the last 3 or 4 years, I've discovered how remarkable Memorial Park is. And I've been photographing flowers here, and I used to spend a lot more time on the road going all over to East Texas and all over the place. But now I find that you can find a lot of pretty flowers here at Memorial Park and the Arboretum. And what I think is probably it's rich because I think probably it's been set aside for a long time, and it has a good, probably a good seed bank. But they brought a lot of good stuff in too. But it's remarkable. It's really remarkable. And I hope I include. Couldn't include everything that's here. These are just the good pictures. But anyway, we'll get started. Memorial Park, 2 places I really like a lot are the Arboretum and also the Glades over there, the new Glades. I don't know how many of you have been over there in that put a nice little lake with it's got beautiful native plants around it. It's wonderful. It's just a great place. Anyway, let's get going. Let's just go through do I need to?
Yeah, but do you want us to do it?
Well, let's see if this one does it right here.
Should do it.
Yeah, just start the.
Which one? Oh,
Sorry, I didn't start it.
okay.
What is that?
That's not it. Something I'm doing, is it?
No,
It's not me, is it?
no.
Okay.
It should work.
Okay.
Your little cushion.
Just push which one? Just this here? That one there.
Is anything plugged into the laptop? It's got a little USB.
Oh,
Yeah. The little child needs to be in the laptop.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Um,
Anyway, we're gonna, basically I'm trying to make this, we're going to go through this season, start out in the early spring. And I may be wrong. This is all off the top of my head when I think they bloom. Of course, I find that some of them, but anyway, hope they're not too much out of order. Okay.
So it's the microphone on there that's causing the feedback, so stay
Oh.
away from.
Oh, okay. All right.
That way.
That helps a lot.
Yeah.
One of the earliest things to bloom in the park is red maple, and there's quite a bit of it. It's in bloom right now. It really has a pretty flower. This I think actually sometimes it has male and female flowers on the same plant. Sometimes they're separate. It's just one of the peculiarities about red maple. Anyway, the next one. The Viola langolosi, and that's really common. It's common all over. You find that in Houston lawns and everything. It's blooming now. but it's a pretty little violet. They have a bunch of it here at the park. And it's starting to bloom right now. One of the unusual things we have here is mayhaw. Mayhaw is a hawthorn that's used to make it has berries that are, called mayhaw, and people actually make jelly out of it. But it's blooming, it's starting to bloom right now. And it's a hawthorn, it's actually Crataegus opaca. Okay, next one. And that's what the fruit looks like. These probably, I think around May or so is when the fruit is ripe. But they have several of them here, and I don't know if they planted them or if they were native here. They probably could have been native here, Of course, one of my favorites, and I've been trying to photograph this one for a long time and get a good picture, but is a redbud. And this is one of the redbuds at the park. And of course, there's quite a bit of redbuds here, but it's an early bloomer too. It's starting to bloom now too. Next one. And we have black cherry here. Prunus seratina. There's quite a bit of that here in the park, and that's starting, well, that'll be blooming real soon. And I don't know if anybody that grew up in this area, you can eat the berries. The fruits are really delicious, Anyway, it's a pretty plant. And Mexican plum, they planted a lot of Mexican plum here. There's a lot of probably native Mexican plum here. And this is what the flower looks like. And this is probably blooming in early March. This is early March when it blooms. Next one. And there's some silver bells. There's silver bells here that are that they have growing on. I know where one is anyway. But it blooms in the early spring and March. It's really neat. I like that plant. Anyway, go again. And of course, the native red honeysuckle is really coral honeysuckle is really a neat one, and it's you can grow this in your yard. I mean, I grew some in my yard one time. I had a wonderful patch of them, and I go out there one day and it had all these little furry caterpillars, and they devoured it anyway. But it's a pretty one. And of course, here's what's called Great Plains ragwort. It may be also called camperweed. I'm not sure, but it's Pachyra tampicana, and it's blooming. It's starting to bloom right now, I think. And of course, there's another one of the hawthorns is Crataegus marshalli, or parsley hawthorn, and they've got several plantings here, and it's really pretty. Flowers are really pretty, and it should be blooming soon. Another one that I really think is really neat is the rusty black haw viburnum. I think that's my favorite viburnum, but there's quite a bit of it here in the park, and it usually blooms probably starting late March, early April. And we have a vetch, Louisiana vetch. Of course, there's a real common one. There's actually a European vetch that is real common. You see it growing along the highways and everything. But this is a native one. It's smaller and it's all over the park, and it's starting to bloom right now too. And these are you just walk the trails and it's amazing that they planted and what grows here. Of course, Gulf Coast penstemon has become one of my favorite plants, and it's just a wonderful plant. And I know a lot of people grow it now, and it blooms for a long time, does real well. There's a lot of it here in the park. We have here is green hawthorn. That's Crataegus viridis. That's another one of the hawthorns. It blooms in April. And of course, we have several species of monardas here that are what do they call this is called the bee balm. but this is Monarda officiosa. This is the purple one. This is a really neat plant. And we have Monarda citrodora, which I understand the reason why it's called citrodora. The fragrance actually has a lemon fragrance in the plant. The Monardas are really, all of them, very fragrant. Of course, we have they planted a lot of the get out of here. Back up. They planted a lot of the prairie parsley, and that's a neat one. I think that's what is that there's one of the swallowtails. That's one of its nursery plants. Of course, we'd be lost without bluebonnets. They've got bluebonnets planted around here. And of course, this is really, this bluebonnet is really not native to this part of Texas, but it grows it everywhere and it's nice. But anyway, let's go on. And this is, this is a tall poppy mallow. This is one that they grow out here, and I've never seen it anywhere here, but here it's a native one. But we have the other one. I can't think of the name of that one, but the wine cup, yeah, it's a wine cup. This blooms in probably May, and of course we have okay, rattlesnake master. I don't know why my memory's not working tonight, but anyway, it's a really neat one, and they've got some wonderful plantings of that. It's really neat. Okay, and the passion flower, Passiflora incarnata. This is just everywhere. I just love this plant. I mean, it's so common, but this is about as pretty a plant. I mean, there's not a prettier passion flower in the world. This is as pretty as any of them. They're all pretty. But anyway, it's always a neat one, and this blooms. Actually, this thing can bloom all from May all the way. I've seen this blooming even in December. Blooms over a long period. Anyway, next one. We wouldn't, and they've got wonderful plantings of lizard tails here that are really neat. And they have some wonderful, wetland plants, and this is one of their really neat ones. This blooms in May. And of course, coral bean, they've got coral beans growing here, and that's blooming in May into June. And it's a neat one too. And of course, this is what the Texas dandelion, I think sometimes called the false dandelion. These are amazing. I mean, you see those have been blooming. Those things are blooming right now. You see them around the medians and on the roads. But it's really, really, really flower. It's so common, but it's just beautiful when you really look at it. Yeah, there's probably, there's several species of smartweeds that grow here, but this is the Pennsylvania smartweed, and I think this is the prettiest one, and this is real pretty, and this blooms in the summertime. Of course, we have this is false indigo, Amorpha fruticosa. They've got some good plantings of this. This has some really pretty flowers. Bees really love this thing. Okay, next one. And this is one of my favorite plants, and I'm not sure if it ever grew. It probably grew right here in the Houston area. The closest location I know of around Cold Spring, there's collections of this, but it grows in sand. And this is one, the standing cypress is really, really, it's really a spectacular. Elderberry, of course, it's kind of a weed. It's kind of taking over my backyard, but it's pretty. It's real pretty. I love it. It has a wonderful fragrance. This blooms in the summertime. And of course, we've got pickerel weed. They've got quite a bit of that growing around their ponds. Their ponds are really spectacular. I mean, you can see a lot of things there. There's a lot of tree frogs, bullfrogs, giant bullfrogs, and it's good for. I've seen a lot of water birds there too. I mean, I've seen things like purple gallinule. It's really a great place for birds too. Anyway, of course, this is the Texas bluebell. And of course, this grows, you know, this, I don't know if this was originally at the park, but this grows in right around Houston. It's everywhere. And it's, I don't know, it's not, I don't know if it was ever really common, but it's beautiful. That was actually growing in a flower bed there at the Glades. But it's, oh, I love this plant. I've been in love with this plant ever since the late 70s. Anyway. And we got Mexican primrose willow, Liggio ludo octavalis. And this is a real common one. This is probably the most common one here at the park. And it's another nice wetland plant. And here is another one. There's probably 3 or 4 species of Ludwigia here in the park. This is the Ludwigia decurrens, primrose willow. Has a smaller flower, but it's a neat plant. Has beautiful leaves. Of course, you know, one of the most common flowers we have here, and it's really, really beautiful, especially when you get in close, is the you know, just common dayflower. They also have they do have the Virginia dayflower here too, but I don't have any photographs from here. And it's a pretty one too. Bacopa Mariani, it's water hyssop. This is a neat little wetland plant. You know, it's got small flowers, but they're really pretty. And this blooms actually through a good portion of the year here in the wetland areas. This is an unusual plant that's kind of rare. I mean, we used to think of it being rare in the big thicket, but they've got it growing here at the Glades, and it does really well. But the water shield is really a neat plant. It's got a neat little, you know, red flower. This blooms in the summer. We have also the powdery thalia, which is Thalia delgata. And this thing is really weird because they say this is not sexually reproducing. It actually reproduces asexually. But it's beautiful, and they've got some wonderful plantings here. This used to be really rare. I mean, now people are growing it in gardens and these parks, so there's a lot of it around now. But you used to really have to go a real long distance to find this stuff. But it's real pretty. Okay. Of course, the American basket flower, they've got quite some plantings here, and you know, that's a neat plant too. You know, I've seen it. You know, I remember when I was working for Parks and Wildlife many years ago, and working in the port office as a seasonal. But I remember driving over, and this stuff was everywhere, and it's just a wonderful. Go ahead. It's a wonderful butterfly plant. I mean, it's just great for butterflies. And I photographed a lot of butterflies on this thing. This is the Gulf fritillary. But one problem with this thing is it's got tall stalks, and if it's windy, it's real hard to photograph butterflies when the wind's blowing. But other than that, it's just a butterfly magnet. It's just wonderful. And of course, we have American germander. That's a neat plant. This is actually in the mid family, isn't it? But it's really, really pretty, and they've got some good plantings of that here in the park. Anglepod milkweed. There's some milkweed vines, and this is one of them. This is Gonalobus suberosus. They changed the name on this. It used to be called Matelia, but they're always changing names, but this is kind of a neat plant. They've got quite a bit of that here. It's kind of unusual. This is another one of the Sagittaria, the arrowheads. And I didn't see this growing in their ponds last year, but the last couple of years it is. And this is it's really one that you find, it's really more of a central or east central Texas plant, but it actually they're actually growing it here in the gardens. So it's neat. It's really the prettiest one because it's got those pretty blotches of color on the petals. Next one. And here's another Sagittaria. This is Sagittaria platyphylla, broadleaf arrowhead, and that's a pink ladybug that happened to be on there, and I just got lucky and got a good picture of it when the bug was there. Anyway, next one. This is another plant that is actually closely related to the arrowheads. And this is it's called the creeping burrhead. And I don't see a whole lot of this growing around anywhere, but they've got some wonderful plantings of this. It seems to be rather uncommon in the Houston area. Well, at least, of course, I spent a lot of time in East Texas, so maybe it's just not that common there, but it's a neat little wetland plant. And of course, spatterdock is Upar adventa. It's a neat plant, and they've got quite a bit of that growing here. And it's, it started blooming in probably May and June, and it bloomed. It was still blooming in December here. Of course, I've always loved the hibiscuses. When I first discovered hibiscuses, I used to have to drive from here to Beaumont or somewhere like that. They were, of course, now I know where they are. They're on the roadsides of a lot of places, but they're not that common. But, they've got them growing here, and that is one of the most beautiful hibiscuses you can have, man. And it's native right here. Anyway, next one. And this is another hibiscus. This is Hibiscus laevis, or it's called the Halbert-leaved hibiscus. They've got this one growing here too. And these sometimes they usually bloom about the same time, but they grow along there. They've got them growing along all their ponds. And the crinum lily looks kind of like a spider lily, but it's not. And it's one, I remember first seeing this 40 years ago, near the Trinity River, and I was really excited about it. And of course, I don't really know that many places where it grows, but they've got it growing here at the park now, and there's growing in several locations, so it's really easy to see. But it's a pretty one. I love that one. And this is one that probably not very many people are aware of. They might know it, but it's called the Devil's Walking Stick, and it's Aurelia spinosa. Well, in the summertime, it produces this massive bunch of flowers, and that it's just really spectacular. It's about, June, July and August is when this thing blooms, and they've got it growing around here. It's, but you don't want to grab a hold of that stuff. It's terrible. It always seems to grow in the wrong places. I've been places where you're hiking and you're reaching for something to grab a hold of, and it's the first thing right in front of you. So you got to be careful. And the trumpet creeper is one that, I've always loved. I remember the first time I was ever introduced to this was when I was a little kid. My aunt was telling me that this was poison ivy. I never thought anything about it, but now this is called, what do they call this? Now sometimes it's called cow itch. So apparently it can have some irritating effect, but I've never had any problems with it. But it's a neat one. Hummingbirds love this. It's really, it's so common, and it just blooms like crazy here in the summertime. Okay. And we have Carolina elephant foot, which is a neat one. I mean, the flowers are really small, but if you get in really close, you can see they're really pretty. This is, of course, this is in the sunflower family. But they've got quite a bit of this growing around here, but it blooms like in August, September. Another neat wetland plant I've been, admiring for many, many years is the climbing hip vane. It's Macania scandens, and they've got wonderful plantings of this. This is, by the way, it's really very fragrant. It's very fragrant. It's a neat plant. Of course, our, just common morning glory. It's the sharp pod morning glory. It's common everywhere, but it's as pretty as any morning glory anywhere in the world. I'll put it up against any of them. But they've got some wonderful patches here in the park, and it's neat. I always love this one. Better be careful though. If this gets in your yard, it can take over. It's pretty weedy. Anyway, now this is one called the Marsh St. John's wort, and this is Triadinum tuberosum. This is it's actually closely related to the hypericums, and this grows in wet areas. I didn't even realize this even had a decent flower until a couple of years ago, and I started looking for it. Finally got to see some in flower. It's pretty. The flowers are small, but they're beautiful. Of course, we have rattlebox. We used to call these coffee bean trees. They're common as hell, but they're really pretty. Next one is bag pod. Now I've got this Hispania versicaria. I think that some people may, there's another genus that they call this now, and I'm not sure which is the right, I guess it depends on what authority, but it's really amazing. It's beautiful. And that blooms in the summertime, like September. And of course, we've got the golden wave, the Coreopsis tinctoria. And that's such a neat way. That's such a neat plant. It's so beautiful, man. I just really love it. Here's one of the hypericums that grows here. The flowers are really pretty small, but if you get in real close and look at them, they're real pretty. And I guess this St. Andrew's cross. This is also, I guess, the same as St. John's wort or whatever. All of these are supposed to be what, antidepressants? They're herbal antidepressant. I don't know how well that works, but apparently it's alleged to be antidepressant. On the next one. Of course, Liatris pycnostacia, the prairie. I've got a prairie blazing star. I don't know. I kind of debate on what's the right common name for these things. Sometimes I just pick the one that I like. Yeah. Anyway, and we got the butterfly piece. There's not a lot of it here at the park, but they've got some at the meadow. And this is a really neat pea flower. I mean, it's just neat. And this blooms in the summer. Of course, Echinacea purpurea, the purple coneflower. And this is a little skipper on top of it. It's a little fiery skipper. And I've just photographed that in the flower bed. But they've got it growing here, and it's really nice. It's a beautiful thing. And of course, the sunflowers are really nice. I used to ignore the sunflowers because, I just wasn't good at telling them apart, but now I'm pretty good at it, But anyway, this is the swamp sunflower, which is probably the most common one around the Houston area. But this is you always look forward to this in the fall when this thing is so bright, colorful. It's just really something. Anyway, next one. Rough blazing star is another one that grows. They've got this growing in the meadow. They've got it growing in some other spots, but it's got some really interesting flowers, and that's summertime. And this is what I call camphor weed, and it's Heterotheca Submaxillary, actually, that's Pachyra, I think it's called I think they changed the name to Pachyra, but anyway. It's really neat. It's, it's common as hell, but it's pretty. Next one, we've got, of course, Lindheimer's, we used to call this Gara,
Yeah.
Lindheimer's bead blossom. Now they call it, they've regrouped it into Enithera, which I think is kind of odd. I mean, it's in the same family, but I've just kind of been surprised by this change, but it's neat. It's common on our prairies, and it's one of the neat prairie plants we have around here. Next one. Of course, the Turk's cap, you know, that's really a neat plant. And boy, the hummingbirds just love the hell out of that. So when the hummingbirds were migrating, I came up here and I spent hours shooting hummingbirds. That is a female ruby-throated hummingbird. What's interesting about the hummingbirds, I didn't realize the males migrate before the females. So the males migrate here starting in July. And then, you know, of course, in the fall, I was wondering why they were all female. And most of them were female. There were some males, most of them were female. So they migrated different times anyway. But Turk's cap are just wonderful. And of course, the blue sage, Salvia azurea, that's just really that's a really neat prairie plant. And that blooms it starts blooming in the summer and blooms all the way into December. And of course, you know, like I was saying, I didn't realize, you know, how many types of sunflowers there were, but you know, I've just realized over the last few years, Biden's they're really pretty. This is a Biden's Aristosa. And what's neat about this plant, I don't know if you can see it on this one. We'll move to the next one. What I think is really neat is there's kind of an optical illusion when you look at those things, when you look at those flowers, you can see that the center of the flower has a brighter yellow that shows. And that's hard to photograph, but you look at it and it's really remarkable. It's one of my favorite. Anyway, next. Well, wait, is that another one? Maybe do I have two of them? Okay, we may have another Dayflower picture. This is the same one, isn't it? I guess I didn't realize I had two of them in there. And this is a Maximilian sunflower, which is it's just a wonderful plant. And I've got a lot of it here. We got Missouri ironweed. They've got some wonderful plantings of that here. It's one I understand that you don't want to grow in your yard because if it ever gets out of control, that's why it's called ironweed, because it's hard to control. Anyway, this is our native Oxalis violacea. I think it's called purple wood sorrel. But anyway, it blooms in the spring and blooms in the fall. Actually, this was blooming in the fall, and actually in the fall you just see the flowers. There's no leaves or anything. The flowers come up in the fall and bloom, and there are no leaves to it. But it's really neat. Of course, our tall goldenrod, Solidago altissima. What's real interesting about this is I took this picture and I didn't realize that there were several animals. There's a couple of lizards there. There's a couple of, and I just didn't even, I didn't even realize I photographed until I got home and looked at it. And good, next one. And of course, this is Conoclinum celestinum, and it's blue mist flower. This is a really pretty thing, and it blooms over a long time. I mean, blooms in the summer and into the fall. It's neat. But those are, And of course, here's another, this is Chromalina odorata, or it's called Jack in the bush is a common name that I came up with. I mean, that I found, and it's called a bunch of things, but this is really more of a South Texas one. But this is a real butterfly magnet. It's just incredible. Go ahead, next one. And here's one with a monarch on it. And it's just incredible. I mean, I photographed so many butterflies on this stuff this year, just really crazy. Okay, next one. And of course, this is one I've been photographing for years, trying to get a good picture of it, because the flowers are so small. But this is an annual salt marsh aster. It's Simplitrichium subulatum. It's very, very common. It doesn't really look like much, but if you look at the flowers close up, they're just beautiful. And next one, frostweed. This is a neat one. I was familiar with this, being in the hill country, but I didn't realize how common it was here in the Houston area. But it's common here too, and it's really neat. It's a pretty plant. And next one. This is why it's called frostweed. This I photographed that this winter. We had a hard freeze. It got down to 18 degrees. If you have a hard freeze, the water in the plant will just crystallize and form these remarkable structures. Okay, next one. And this is Thalvia coccinea, which is really this is a neat one. I mean, it's very weedy, but it's real pretty. And this was still blooming. This thing was still blooming when we were when we did our bird. They had the Christmas bird count here at the Arboretum. We actually went to look at that one to look for the Rufus hummingbird because it was still in bloom. And this was late December, but it's gone now because the freeze took care of it. But anyway, next one. And that's it. And I want to say that, there's some wonderful, wonderful fall color here too in some of these vines here. Arboretum is just great. It's just, I spend so much time here now. And anyway, thank you. Anybody have any questions? Yeah.
Well, it covered your photos with this outstanding.
Well, thank you. I'll work hard at that.
Did you go about setting up stuff that photos?
What's that?
Setting the camera settings.
Camera settings, they all style.
Oh, okay.
Joe,
Well-
can you repeat the question, please?
Okay. One of the things that you need to do is, especially the smaller flowers, you need to stop down. I usually stop 16 or 22 or, at least F11, depending on how big the flower is. Bigger flower, you don't need this small f stop. And of course, we have problems with small f stops because, you don't get much light when you stop it down. But that's what you need to do to get the depth of field. But I use flash, and I use flash and ambient light combination. I like to use enough flash to light up the subject, but I like to have enough ambient light so it's well lit. And anymore, I don't use tripod anymore. I've got a macro lens that has image stabilization. That is a real game changer. If you're gonna get a camera, I always say get one that has image stabilization because you don't have to use a tripod. Yeah. Most of these were taken with a Nikon 105 macro lens, which is really neat. I mean, they've got one now. I mean, it's like $1,000, but it's got image stabilization and it just works really well. I've just been really, really amazed.
Any questions on Zoom?
Okay.
Online, no.
Yeah. Do I have a what?
Can you repeat that, Joe?
Map. Yeah, well, usually, I mean, just if you walk on any of the trails, you're gonna see a lot of good stuff. The wetland plants, the ponds they have planted here are really have really a lot of neat plants, and they do a tremendous job. They work real hard, and it's just amazing. Well, let's see. There's a lot of the parsley hawthorn. There's some growing over here, and there's some growing over here. In the middle between what they call the Wildflower Trail and this trail over back here. But there's several of those around. There's lots of wild plum. I only know of one silver bell. I'm hoping to donate some silver bells so they can plant some more here because I really love that plant. Okay.
When I was walking from the parking lot, I could have sworn I smelled the grate of mountain laurel, which isn't native to here, but it's round. You know, are there mountain laurels around the front?
No. They have, I know that they planted one back in the woods back here. And,
Making it up, but it's the right
yeah,
kind of
yeah.
mountain
You know, I had a wonderful one. I had a big one. It's really big and it's beautiful. And, the freeze in 2021, you know, I guess just wasn't a cold temperature. It was just the fact that when the ground was frozen so long that it couldn't get any water and it died back, you know. So I was really disappointed about that one. So I never got another one, but it's neat. It's really, I love those things.
Yeah, so for anyone here, our mountain laurel smells like grape soda.
Yeah.
It's real distinct, so just see, sniff around, I never got imagine, but on the way back.
The Mexican plum smells similar too.
Oh, really?
Yeah, the Mexican plums are blooming right at the edge.
Can
Okay.
you just repeat what said so that there's people on Zoom?
Yeah, it was just mentioned that the mountain laurel smells like grape jelly or grape. It's really a sweet smell. It's poisonous, so don't eat the berries. But anyway, yeah, Mexican plum apparently is fragrant too. I didn't know that, but it smells very similar. Okay.
A question from Mary Spallier online. What is your favorite trail at Memorial Park?
Favorite tree?
Trail at Memorial Park.
I like the what they call the Wildflower Trail. It's the one that they spend a lot of time on. It goes all the way back to the Woodland Woodway, and it's just wonderful. They've got some wonderful plants. It's always beautiful, and they work real hard at it. Okay.
Thank you.
Any more questions? Great. Thank you, Joe. Man, Joe's presentations are such a breath of fresh air, and like it's just so meaningful to have him give those talks in this room to these folks who are so receptive to it, because that's why we're all here, you know, to see the beautiful plants. So thank you, Joe. You contribute so much. And yeah, we are in the process of planning field trips. So if y'all want to be involved in helping us plan the field trips, definitely get with me or Linda Knowles in the back.
So I want to say that, you know, the land bridges, I've been over there. I haven't been there much, but it's really, got some really neat stuff. It's really spectacular this year.
Yeah, so he said the land bridges are gonna be spectacular. Yeah, there's a lot of support. I definitely need to get out there more. I'm on the east side of town, so I don't get to the west as much, but yeah, thank you, Joe. Any more announcements? Okay, should we do the door prizes to get the gamma grass? Or should we just? Should we do the door prizes
Yeah.
to get the gamma grass?
Pick a number.